In this video, I'm going to go over some of the examples covered when looking at slope point form. All right, so I'm filming this video a little bit differently than I normally do. I'm actually just going to film it using Zoom just to save time with my editing. This video is coming in response to this comment here, so I didn't want to let them down. I did have a migraine yesterday, so I'm still recovering from that. If I do make any mistakes or if you notice something a little off, that's probably the reason. And sorry, if I did make a mistake, please let me know in the comments and I'll address it. So let's get started with our first example here. All right, so before I actually dive into the examples, I want to just go over two different equations that you're going to commonly see. There is a third one, but this video is just focusing on the two. So our first form is our slope-intercept form. So with this, we have a few things to consider. M is always going to be our slope, and B in this form is our y-intercept. So what this means is this is basically the direction of the line, if it's going up to the positive or going down to the negative. And this is where the graph, the line on the graph, is going to hit that y-intercept, right? So that's kind of what's happening there. Then with this one, these two are actually points on the graph. And then again, just like in the previous example, that's our slope. So here is our slope-intercept form, and this one here is our point-slope form. So what we're going to do is either be converting between this form to this, or I'm going to show you where they give you the points and you have to derive this equation. All right, so as always, the link to this worksheet can be found below. So let's see what we have going on here. We have our slope, so we love that. We don't actually have to calculate it. If you are not given the slope, you are going to have to calculate it with our rise over run formula, okay? And then in this case, aside from the slope, they also gave us our point. So now we can actually just pop some things into our equation. So remember, our equation looks like this. All right, so what I've done here is written out our equation, and then we can now start to sub in our values. So here is my y point, and then here's my x point, right? Of course, when they give us a point, it goes in the form of x and y. So now I'm going to plug these in. So I'm going to say y minus y1. Notice how I'm putting that -4 in brackets. That is really, really important. In fact, I'm even going to highlight this here because those negatives are normally what mess up students. Now our slope is -2, so where the m is, I'm going to place our -2. And then for the remaining part of the equation, I'm going to go x minus our x point, which is just 4. So now what I need to do is recognize that when I see a negative outside the bracket of another negative, I need to basically clean that up and simplify. So this is the same thing as saying -1 times -4. So a negative times a negative is going to make a positive. That means this equation looks something like this. And in this case, because it's a negative times a positive, well, that's just going to still make it become a negative. So that part of the bracket becomes x minus 4, and that is our equation. All right, so let's look at this example. With this one, it looks a little tricky because it almost feels like they didn't give us the whole point, right? All they're saying is slope is 8, so that's going to be m, and then they gave us the y-intercept. Now, as I said earlier in the video, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis, right? And our y-axis is standing up nice and tall. So we need to think about what that means. That means they actually did give us a point, but they didn't tell us they gave us a point. So this point is going to be 0, 5, because if it's hitting the graph here, right, the x value is going to be 0 and the y is going to be 5. So now we can do what we did last time and just plug it into our formula. So again, here's our equation. And then here's our point. So we're gonna go y minus 5. Again, I'm gonna put it in brackets just to make sure I don't mess up any of my negatives, is equal to m. Well, m is 8. And then our x point is 0. So now I can look at this and say, all right, well, I have no negatives outside the brackets, so we love that. That means I can clean it up by making my equation look something like this. And that's my answer. All right, this is the last example I want to go through for this video. I'm actually tweaking the question a little bit just to fit the comment that I got. So this question says, write, well, we have to write the equation into slope-intercept form. What I'm going to do is we're going to do it as slope-intercept form, and we're going to do it as slope-point form, or sorry, point-slope form. Again, I had the migraine yesterday. I am exhausted. But let's go through it here so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. So the first thing is we need to find the slope of this line. So slope we know is rise over run. And there's two ways I can do it. I can just draw the lines of my rise over run, or I can pick 2 points and calculate it. Now I'm going to go on the assumption that you already know how to calculate slope at this point. So our slope, you're going to take my word for it, is going to be -1. And for sure it's negative. We can see our line is going downwards, if that helps. Then the next thing is we have to figure out what B is. Now, as I said at the start of this video, B is the y-intercept. Now this y-intercept, they tried to trick us, but it's not going to work. We can see here's -4, and they didn't give us the value at the bottom there. That, of course, is -5, and we can see the line is about to intersect there. So that means our y-intercept is going to be -5. So when I plug this into my equation, I'm going to get the following. Y is equal to -x. I can just drop the 1 minus 5. So perfect. That's great. That is in our in this form. Now we want to go to point slope form. So same idea is going to follow. I'm going to have my equation. So y minus, I'm still going to write it in as y1 for right now. My slope we know is -1, and then x minus x1. Now we have to pick 2 points. In a graph like this, we can do what we did last time, and we can just pick the intercept of the y-axis. I'm actually going to pick a different point here just to kind of drive everything home. So I'm going to pick this point here because it can be any point on the line. This point is -3, 1. And I'm purposely doing that because, again, I want to model how to type in or how to pop in those negative numbers. So for my point, my y1 is going to be just +1. We love when it's positive. And my x1 is going to be -3. So let's rewrite it. And if you've noticed in my previous videos and even this video, I am really annoying about rewriting things. And the reason for that is twofold. One, your teacher can see your mistakes or anything that might need tweaking. Two, you can do the same, and then you're going to know exactly how to fix it, right? So here's my equation. 1 is equal to -1, bracket x minus -3. And again, we see that pattern where there is a negative outside the negative. So whenever that happens, we can consider it as a negative times the negative, which will change it to positive. So this equation now becomes this. And that right there is our final answer for this one. All right, I hope that was helpful. As you know, I do hold those one-on-one sessions. Information for that can be found in the description below. Until then, everybody, good luck studying for finals, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.